Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Experiencer Podcast, the podcast that brings you upfront and personal with past and present enigmatic experiences from individuals who have witnessed or even interacted with the strange, the extraordinary, and the otherwise unknown existence of UFOs or aliens. If you've had an out-of-this-world experience you'd like to share, please reach out to me at theexperiencerpodcast@gmail.com. If you have photos or footage of UFOs, IAPs, or any other extraordinary phenomena and would like to share it, please forward it to theexperiencerpodcast@gmail.com. I am humbled to be able to broadcast with you all and share the following experiences from today's guest. I'm going to keep this simple. I'll introduce our guest, and otherwise we'll jump right into the show and let him tell us the gist of it. This is QuarterMaster, Second Class Surface Warfare Specialist El Jefe. We're going to go by that today and keep him safe. Thank you for being here with us this evening. El Jefe is kind enough to spend some time with us today to share and hopefully just maybe inspire folks to a more mind-opening dialogue around this sort of subject. Please, Quartermaster El Jefe, do us a favor and begin by giving us the setting. Maybe start with telling us where and when and how old you were when all this took place.
All right. So just for reference, what I experienced happened between the years of '93 and '97 while I was active duty in the military.
Perfect.
And I didn't really see, I haven't seen much of it since then.
So tell us a little bit about what you did in your position, if you'll give us that setting.
I was a quartermaster in the Navy, and so my job was to basically make sure we got from point A to point B safely. It's my job to know where we are at all times, and to be sure we know that we're not anywhere near some kind of hazard that where we can either hit or shallow water where we can run aground. And so the first time I experienced something that was out of the ordinary. My ship was built in Maine. In 1993, we sailed from Maine across the Panama Canal to San Diego, and in transit we happened to cross the Bermuda Triangle. There's a lot of talk about the Bermuda Triangle. There wasn't anything funny except when we were in the middle of it, our ship lost power for 2 hours on the dot. Part of what I do on a ship is to keep the ship's log, which is essentially a document that keeps a record of every single thing that happens on the ship. And so it was my job to document this thing. So, the ship immediately lost power randomly, and nobody knew why. And we ran around trying to figure it out for 2 hours. 2 hours on the dot, power comes back on, and we managed to continue sailing with no other no other incidents. And that was the first time that we were like, "Whoa, what just happened?" And
now, were you guys just off the port, or were you out in the ocean?
No, this was in the middle of the ocean.
Wow. And how often, I'm sorry to interject, but how often might something like that happen, especially with your size or class of ship?
Well, I mean, there's always stories that you hear, but to actually experience it first class or firsthand, it's a different. It's different. I've never heard of it actually happening other
Wow.
than secondhand stories. People telling me, that they've experienced it. But this was the first time that it actually happened to me, and we were. I gotta admit, I was a little scared because I didn't know what the hell was going on. Um, but luckily, it was a very minor incident where we just power came back on just out of the blue, and we were on our way.
Did you ever figure out what might have contributed to it, or again, that's what makes this incident just as
No, I
mysterious?
mean there was plenty of investigations. You had your engineers, your people doing what they do to restore power, and they could not. There was no, there was nothing that you can point to that you can say that was the cause for us losing power for 2 hours on the dot. There
Okay,
was just never anything that came of it.
interesting.
And so the next incident happened probably a year later. We were again in middle. I think this was in the Indian Ocean. We were either on our way to or on our way back from our first deployment to the Gulf, and we were rolling as we normally do in the middle of the ocean in the middle of the night. We're doing our thing, and all of a sudden, this big bright green orb kind of casually rolled up to the windows in front of the bridge on the ship. From what I remember, it was probably about the size of a volleyball, basketball,
And it was
like
a
kind of like
big
neon
what now?
green, like an orb, like a little,
Oh,
it was like a ball that was floating, just kind of floated up to the ship as we were going and hovered there for a second, and it was gone.
what? Now, when you say it hovered by the window, you're talking about like the window of the main hull, or where were you at that?
Yeah, on the bridge. So
Oh, on the
on the bridge,
bridge.
on the bridge of the ship, where they steer the ship and the captain hangs out, and
Wow.
that's where I worked. I worked,
So, how many people
on
were
the
on the bridge at that time?
um, your normal bridge watch is one, two, three, four, five people um, that all witnessed this thing. I was a quartermaster on watch, and so you know, part of my job is also to continually look out and try to find any objects or anything that could be a hazard to the ship. And
So,
so, we have night vision goggles, we have binoculars, we have really really big binoculars that are available, and so we're always looking out the windows. And then this thing just casually popped up. I mean, you can imagine a drone just kind of rolling up to the bridge of the ship as we're sailing. You had to be doing 15, 20 knots, and it's just rolling along with us. And and then just as quick as it came, it was gone, and we didn't see it again.
what was it? What did it hold with you? Was it 30 seconds, 10 seconds? How long was it there at that window?
I mean, it feels like it was there for a second, but it had to be a good 15, 20 seconds that it just hovered there, kind of, trying to figure out what the hell I guess we were doing. Um, and then it just gone, you know.
I love how you describe it, like a drone. Today, that's all the normal. But back then, was it?
Yeah, this was in 94, 95. I don't think that those were
No.
commercially available at the time.
They weren't even barely militarily talked about yet, right?
Right, right.
Let's be honest. It was the break of the 2000s that both commercially and militarily. I mean, obviously military is 5 to 10 years ahead in its practical use, but
Yeah.
we're still early 2000s before we even see it. So this is a good moment ahead. Now,
You
again,
know,
go
and
ahead.
and even if it had been, just let's just consider it for a second. And
Hmm.
I don't know that a drone can look like a basketball and shine, um, glow like a glow in the dark, like it was painted with glow in the dark paint. But you got to remember, we were in the middle of the ocean where there's zero light.
Wow. Wow. And so that's what I was going to ask you. Can you give us just a little bit more of a description? You gave us its size. And again, did I hear it correctly? Did you say neon green?
Neon green, yeah. Um, it just glowed.
Okay, so it did have a glow to it.
Yeah.
And would you say, did it pulse? Did you hear anything? Did you feel anything? Did it have like a glow around it? Like it was ionizing the air around it at all? Was there anything else you noticed?
I don't remember any of that, and because we're inside the ship, and
Mm-hmm. That
you know, it's
separation.
it's outside, and even just going outside going out to the bridge wing. As soon as you step outside, you got wind and noise, and it's just very loud, and you can't really hear what's going on outside. So I didn't hear anything or really feel anything. It was more like, what the fuck is this?
And was that window in the object itself 5 or 10 or 15 feet from you, approximate?
Oh yeah, it had to be a good 5 feet away from our window.
And then plus the window
If
itself
that,
was
because
5 foot
the
from you.
windows are not very big. I mean, you got a lot of window, a big row of windows, but this is reinforced glass,
Yeah,
and the windows are not very big themselves. So I got to say, the windows are probably 2 by 2,
yeah,
maybe a little bigger, and so it had to be relatively close to see in.
yeah.
And this is what I'm just assuming. It has
I
to be
like that though.
close
You
enough.
interpret it as seeing in. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, what else would it be doing?
Right. Right. Wow. That's really something. Is there any other details, any other thoughts you have about that, or about seeing it, or
Um, I mean,
description wise?
again, because I'm the one who had to document it, it kind of stayed with me. But no, I mean, those were very brief incidents. They happened and then it was done, and
Hmm.
that was it.
May I ask you, was
Um,
your instinct to say, "Sir, there's something, what is it called, buzzing us? What's it called when an
mhm.
object is following us? Sir, there's an object buzzing us outside our window." Or was your instinct like, I'm about to speak and then I catch myself and I'm like, let me see if anybody else observes it before I speak up? What was your instinct in the
Well, no, it was clear that everybody saw it. We were all like, "What the
moment?
fuck is that?" um, but yeah, I mean, it's something that again, it happened so fast. Before we can even figure out what just happened, it was done. And what do you do at that point other than
Right, and I'm
you,
sure,
you notify the chain of command as required, but there's nothing else to do at that point.
and there's a chain of command right there present in front of you, correct?
100%, yeah,
and
always.
and how they react is how you all react. So if the chain of command is silent, standing in front of you, that means we're not writing a report. Shut the fuck up. Is that I
Yeah,
assume what happened?
essentially they at some point they take you off to the side and kind of tell you not to say anything. Um, but again, because it was so, I guess, relatively minor.
And vague
You
of
know,
an incident, yeah.
right? There wasn't much follow up, and
No.
and again, I never really thought much about it because it was so in and out. It was
Mhm.
literally a few seconds, and that's it. And
Right. So
so,
it doesn't leave much to say from the boss to you or you to anyone else because it's such a quick general incident. Yes, it's extraordinary, but it's so short lived that there's no reason for anybody to do much more than to say, hey, keep it to yourself.
yeah, pretty much. You know, especially because there was no additional incidents or no follow up or no nobody freaked out, which was probably good. And so I gotta believe they just felt, yeah, let's just leave it here, and that's where it stayed.
Yeah, yeah, that's really interesting. That's really just quite awesome. Was there anybody that you noticed of the five of you that had the biggest mouth? When you looked over and observe
No,
everybody watch.
I don't remember anybody else's reactions or experience because we really didn't even talk about it amongst the people that were there. And I gotta tell you, I don't think I could tell you if my life depended on it who was up there with me that night.
Right, it was that quick of a night and that long of a time ago, huh?
Yeah, I mean, you got to remember, you spend so many watches and do this so many times over the course of a 4 year um, enlistment, you know,
Yeah.
and see so many people that it's almost impossible. Even though it was it was a different experience, it just didn't stay with me.
No, I hear you. We all talk. We talk fairly common on this show about how we all have an experience. You still got to wake up the next day. Everything still continues to rotate, and so in some ways it loses its gravity. But and
Mm.
it becomes just another experience, even though it is something quite extraordinary nonetheless.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I may, I'm gonna ask you a couple follow up questions, and we'll go from there. And is there any other thoughts on that experience? The year, the time, the date. Was there anything else that sticks out to you, or any other thoughts?
That there is well, there was one more incident from this incident. There's nothing really else that kind of stuck with me. Again, it was because it was such a brief event, and I guess immediately everything was internalized, and there was really nothing more.
Yeah.
But there was one more incident that happened that it wasn't as as crazy, I would say. Again, this is in the middle of the ocean,
Hmm.
and part of what we do is as a crew standing watch in the middle of the night in the middle of the ocean is you're watching to make sure we're not hitting anything. That includes land, that includes objects, that includes other ships. Um, and so, we're doing our thing. I couldn't tell you where we were at that time, but we're rolling around, and the radar picks up a large contact, near where we were. Typically, when there's a contact, there are certain things that you have to do to ensure you are coming nowhere near it. You know, there's a and so there's different people that do different things. The 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 operations specialists, they call them OSs at the time. They're the ones who operate the radar and kind of keep track of all that and talk to um, information central downstairs in the ship. And so they're the ones who actually picked up the contact. And typically, when there's a contact, you try to reach them, make some kind of communications with it to find out who it is. A lot of times we know who it is because they're friendly. Um, but this was a contact where we couldn't figure out what it was, whether it was friendly, whether it was a ship or an island or something else, and we couldn't communicate with it. And when something like that happens, a lot of times we assume it's somebody, someone who is in need of help. And so, based on what we saw and the size of the contact, which I got to say was, I don't know, I want to say 7 to 10 miles away from where we were. Um, it appeared to be a big ship, potentially one of those big tankers or I don't know. We just so we started making our way. The decision was made to start heading that way to figure out what it is. And so, when we get there, there's nothing there. And so, a lot of times these things malfunction, but um, I was sitting there watching this thing, and we were watching this thing ping on the radar, and it wasn't something where you could say, oh, it could have been a cloud or weather or something. No, it was clear, clear skies, and there was just nothing there. But we saw something on the radar, and
Something
you
large,
know,
something huge.
something really big.
How long did it stay on
Uh,
the radar?
um, it, I want to say that it was there when we got there, where it should have been, but we could not physically with our eyeballs see anything
Oh, wow.
there.
So it was still showing as you pulled up and even after you were on the
Yeah,
scene.
So we're sitting there looking for this big, massive thing that we expect to see, and there's just nothing there.
Wow. Now, did you, by chance, did you guys position yourselves directly above it? Do you guys do that kind of thing?
No, no, never that close. Again,
You don't want to hit it, even if it is
you
invisible.
never want to put yourself in a position to potentially even come close to
And how about
either running.
sending out any vessels, smaller craft to look down in the water or anything like that? Do you guys do that protocol?
No, none of that was done because again, you know, there was
Nothing.
nothing. You typically don't put a small boat in the water unless you have a visual on something.
Wow.
Um, if you're just going to go patrol, we just stay on the ship, and there's plenty of tools available. There's lights, there's binoculars, there's
There you go. Okay, to look down into
stuff.
the water.
Hmm.
And you would assume
And
if something was sinking that you would be able to see it or bubbles or whatever.
well, if it was sinking, yeah, we wouldn't see it on radar.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, if it was, if
Because
it was like
radar's
halfway,
in the atmosphere.
radar only picks up surface contact.
Interesting. Okay. Wow.
No, so if it was partly sinking, it probably wouldn't have looked as big. I don't know.
Did you guys have any kind of discussion around what reality could be while you're standing there at,
No,
something giant on the radar and you're looking at an empty space?
no. For all I know, it could have just been a malfunction of the equipment.
Mhm.
But this isn't something that was normal. We one thing I guess that I should mention, we had this was a brand new ship. Our ship had been commissioned in 1993, and it was what you would say the Corvette of the fleet at the time. They had the top of the line equipment, best of everything, and so these things just don't happen. But you know, again, the discussion was there's nothing there, so we'll just chalk it up to it was equipment malfunction, and that's where it stayed.
But equipment malfunction on a brand new ship with a pretty top of the line radar, I take it.
Right.
Wow. That is quite intriguing. That is quite an incident nonetheless.
So and that was really the last time that I remember, or at least that I can remember anything major like that happening. So it definitely happened all while in the middle of the ocean,
Yeah.
out at sea.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's been recent news about the rogue waves. Did you ever experience any of those while you were serving?
No,
Talking about, of course, the giant waves that kind of come out of the ocean, and they're still studying what causes them.
no, I never experienced. I mean, we experienced really really big seas,
Right.
but yeah, not no rogue waves like that.
Man, those are still quite the experiences. It's interesting how general they are, but yet there's still really something to that, to travel 7 to 10 miles to pull up on something that's not there, to see something glowing green for 15 seconds by your main windows of your ship, and everybody in the five can see it, all the way to your first experience of just losing power in the ocean. Those are really quite intriguing incidents, especially when we're talking about large craft or up-to-date vehicles, or top of the line American ships. We all know they do break down at times, and even to the detriment of soldiers themselves and their lives. But this is still quite intriguing to have any of these incidents, let alone all three, happen while you were serving. How many years did you serve, if you don't mind?
Total of 8.
Wow. And that was just post or at the tail end of Desert Storm, am I correct on that?
Yeah, fortunately, I went in um, right after Desert Storm, and and I got out right before or at the beginning of Desert Shield.
And it sounds like you guys were just patrolling those oceans, if you spoke of the Indian Ocean, huh?
Yeah, well, actually, we did on our I did end up doing one deployment on that ship, and we got to go to the Gulf and really just patrol the areas of the Gulf that were assigned to us. And at that time there wasn't a lot of action, but it was more keeping an eye for smugglers and small arms dealers, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
But that was really we really didn't get to see much action. It was we kind of came in out when there was just cleanup being made.
Still, every day on a boat, confined with a bunch of men, doing your time, 8 years, man. Thank you for your service, brother. That's really quite phenomenal in itself.
Yeah.
Well,
So it's definitely an experience.
Oh, I bet. I can't even. I can't even imagine. Personally, brother, nothing but respect. So do me a favor. I'm gonna hit you with a couple of follow up questions and see what you have for me. So, have you ever had prior UFO sightings or orb experiences of the same kind before or since?
No, never. Not before, not after.
Interesting. And how about have you ever had prior or since paranormal experiences of a different kind?
Um, Not really. I mean, once or twice, you're sleeping and then you feel like something is on top, sitting on top of you, and you can't move. That has happened to me a couple of times, but other than that, no, not really.
Did yours come complete with like the breathing, the loss of breath, and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, yeah. Um, you
Yeah,
know,
I've had that as well in a number of our experiencer guests. We talk about not just UFO here, but we kind of parallel that with experiences in the paranormal. And yeah, we've talked about hearing whispers, hearing voices, being sat on, the chest compression, and even seeing the shadow beings. So we, we
hmm
we like to dabble in it all here on this show.
yeah, yeah. But other than that, I mean, no, not really anything that's worth even talking about.
Copy that. No worries. No worries. And do me a favor. How have those experiences, and as small or long as they were ago, how have these occurrences left you feeling? What do you think about them in hindsight? Do you interpret them any differently?
Not really. Because they were very brief and very, I guess, relatively uneventful events,
Fair enough.
and because of the position that I was in, you know, I just chalked it up to this is part of the job. And when they tell you don't say anything about it, and so we just chalk it up as, yeah, it's not a big deal. It's just another day, uh, another day on the job.
Indeed, indeed, and fair enough. So, how about even if it didn't change the trajectory of your thinking, or get you on some cosmic track for otherworldly inception, even if it didn't do all that, how about just the experience itself of seeing the green orb? Do you think, in hindsight, do you think that was enemy? Do you think that was earthly? Do you think that was otherworldly? Just taking a couple seconds to yourself. How do you interpret that object? And it's you definitely made it seem like it was doing reconnaissance. But do you think it
Mm.
was from this world, or do you think it was ahead of our time?
I I really don't think it was something human made. Um, even being in the military, I mean, I had access to a lot of information that a lot of people don't. And at the time, I got to believe that the technology that thing had, I don't believe it's something that we could have been working on. And so, um, I always thought it was something otherworldly, or another planet, other technology, other. But again, it isn't something that I think too much about.
I did miss a question, a descriptive question, and I know I probably drilled you and bugged you on it already, but just back to a description of the ball.
Hmm
You talked about its green glow. How about its actual surface? And I know you were separated by 5-10 feet, plus a window and another 5 feet, nighttime, all that. But metallic surface, silicon. Did you have any
mm
any sense of its makeup or its
No,
material?
it essentially just looked like a round light. So there was no. I don't recall seeing a surface or a texture or anything like that.
Perfect.
It
Yeah.
was just essentially a glowing. ball, a glowing light. Um, it was weird because I say it's about the size of a basketball or volleyball, but it was just really just a if you can imagine a floating light.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what it was.
That's really cool and intriguing yet and still, because our drones today are so small and equipped with at least a camera. So to imagine something that's a basketball size, that's obviously has other technology from in its propulsion system. So you can imagine, if it's a basketball, it's got to be equipped with quite a bit to be that size. No,
Right, right.
man, that's really
And and it moved really fast.
really
You
smooth,
can
keeping pace
e-
with
e-
you.
equate it to your drones nowadays that can move really fast, but this is something that really, for its size and where we were, that was pretty impressive.
Indeed, indeed. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna hit you with another question here. How about
All right.
and not to be too invasive, so please, pardon it, but has anyone in your family had similar experiences? If pops or anybody else in the military, mom or dad spoke of any UFO experiences prior. Anybody else in the family?
No, unfortunately not. At least not that I remember. My son was in the Navy as well, and he didn't, at least not to me, never mentioned anything of the sort. Other, there are other incidents, but nothing nothing for this conversation.
Copy that. Copy that. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool that he served as well, man. Again, utmost respect and thanks to you guys. Have you ever reported this to any agency, such as MUFON, National UFO Reporting Center, any person or organization, your experience with the green orb or otherwise?
No, no, I never. I always, again, just chalked it up to it was no big thing, not necessarily anything to report.
I hear you. I hear you.
And that's how it's always stayed.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And so, in that regard, I do appreciate you so much, Quartermaster El Jefe, for coming on today and sharing with our listeners and myself your experiences. And, by all means, especially if you haven't gone to any organization or agency before, thank you for taking the time to come on today and share with us, man. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Thank you again for having me.
Most definitely. You're too kind, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in today. If you enjoyed what you heard, don't hesitate to like, subscribe, or follow the Experiencer podcast. If you have an experience you'd like to share, you can contact me at theexperiencerpodcast@gmail.com with your story. Also, the Experiencer podcast is building a companion website that will showcase any accompanying photos, footage, or details allowed or submitted with featured podcast episodes. It's in that vein that the Experiencer podcast is seeking and accepting any footage of alleged sightings, encounters, or experiences caught on camera. Please forward any links, footage, or photos via WeTransfer or Dropbox to the email theexperiencerpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again, everybody, and until next time, be sure to take care of yourselves and never take those eyes off the skies. Good morning and good day.